welcome back to the show. You know who it is. It's your boy Jay Hennahan, and I'm back with another episode of How to Kill a Sacred Cow. Tonight on the podcast, we have Jake Locorotondo. He is the host of the brand new podcast. We're talking brand new. It's like 10 episodes in of the show Loco Listens. This is a show about mystical conspirituality, symbiosis, and community. We spoke mainly about, so he's an English teacher, so we spoke a lot about literature, some of our favorite books and movies. He said this was really cool, and this is something that I also like to do, but this is something that he did in school, was he would read the classic work and watch the classic movie, and then watch an updated version of that movie. And that's a really cool way to really catch all angles of a piece of work. Because it involves several people in different media and in different eras. And it's a really cool thing. I enjoy doing it very much. But I want everybody to go check out his Instagram, and I'm going to put his link tree right here in the show description. I definitely want you to go check that out. But we were also talking a lot about some of these authors that I've been meaning to put into the suggested reading section of my library here on howtokillasacredcow.com. So I put in Dante, the Divine Comedy. I put in Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Absolutely one of my hands-down favorite authors. I absolutely love the Brothers Karamazov. I cannot suggest this book enough. And I'm going to go through and listen to the podcast again, and I'm going to update the library section again and try to include some more of the books that we were talking about. And so what I want everybody to do is, like I've been telling everybody, is I have been updating the website, trying to make it a user-friendly experience. And so I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. But if anybody wants to help out the show, as you can see, I have taken away the donate cryptocurrency and PayPal buttons and put them here with all these buttons. It's a very cool, sleek look. So if you want to check out anything here of mine, you can go there. But if you click the Amazon button, which is down there at the bottom of the homepage and on subsequent pages as well, it'll just take you to, as I'll just press it right here, it just takes you to Amazon, just like that, and you can buy anything you want, and I get a commission out of it. It's really cool, helps me out, and it just hits me off a little commission. Of course, I have the donate cryptocurrency button here, of which you can do through your Coinbase. Your Coinbase app, as well as the donate PayPal button. Right down here, you can save 53% on your first 4 months of Audible, and I'm telling you guys, like, I absolutely love Audible. I use the hell out of it, and I'm always excited to see my credit come through at the end of the month. And another way that you can help the show is by, like we were saying, we can go to the library, and you can go to guest books or suggested reading, and I get a commission off of any of those that you go through. And of course, you can go to the How to Kill a Sacred Cow store. We've got 2 t-shirts and a mug. How fucking cool is that shit? Now, like I was saying, this was a fantastic episode. I'm so glad this kid reached out to me. He's an adult. And another thing, it was his birthday. It was his 27th birthday, so I was very honored that he wanted to spend it talking with a guy like me. So, without any further ado, Jake Locorotondo. Yeah, man, like I just realized I probably should have already been recording. This is already
It's a good flow, man. It's a good flow.
So, I was just actually listening to, I should have suspected that you're a musician. I went deep into your video archives on YouTube, and you got some drum covers in there. So, how long you been playing drums? I mean, that particular video was a Tweedle. It was a Tweedle cover.
Twiddle, yeah, man.
Twiddle, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, no, I do. I really like Twiddle.
Hell yeah.
Only thing, that's the band Twiddle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, yeah, Twiddle from Vermont, right out of the UVM area.
Yeah. Like, I really love them. Only problem with them is like 90% of their songs are the same song. That's my only knock on
that's
them.
the main attack against Twiddle or like other jam bands in that same kind of groove. But yeah, man, first of all, I just want to thank you, Jay. It's really cool. I appreciate the invite, and this whole community is just badass, man. I'm happy to be on here with you. And what a beautiful day. Very special day too. But for those drum covers, I'm so happy that you found those, because that was my first ever content creation exploration that I've ever published. And bro, like playing drums was definitely my introduction to the quote unquote flow state. It's really cool. I remember the first time ever setting up a video camera and being like, I can make my own drum cover. And there was this really beautiful blonde girl named Jackie who lived in Florida. She was making badass drum covers to like Paramore. Like I was listening to like Misery Business back in the day, and like little angsty Jake. And then I was like, I want to try this. So I set it up, and what I was listening to at that time, way back when, and these videos are all erased and rest in peace, but it was Danny, California by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and that was my jam. And God bless my parents for putting up with that. If you buy your kid a drum set, God bless you, man. That is like a rude awakening. You're like, shit, why did I do this? But you just got to be patient, and it will get better.
Yeah, my father was going to get me a drum set when I was a kid, and my mother vociferously shut that down. And so years later, I was to get a guitar. My mother she didn't even want me to get a guitar. Yeah, she thought it was going to be too noisy. She thought the house was just going to be like vibrating and rumbling.
Buy you
and
books
shit
instead, yeah.
Yeah, but it was actually kind of ridiculous. And then my aunt kind of went behind her back and got me a guitar when I was 12.
Nice.
And it was like, that's all I ever wanted to do.
Yeah, man.
I've been in the same band now since I was, pretty much 15. We've been together.
Yeah.
We've been together about 18 years. About.
What do you guys call yourselves?
George Orwell the musical. It's,
okay.
Yeah, it's a
double plus good, man.
It's actually rare for people to have read 1984. I bring it up all the time. I'm like, you ever read 1984? They're like, no, I never read it. I'm like, how have you existed on this planet this whole time? And no one even assigned it to you. No one told you had to read it, that it was whatever. So it's a mathcore band. So it's metal.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Okay.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy.
Technical
heavy
stuff, dude. And yeah, man, it's awesome. Like at this point, I mean, I could forgive people who've made it through 2019 and not read George Orwell or Aldous Huxley. But, after 2020, it was no surprise that 1984 became the top selling book. And it was the one thing my father, God bless him, man, he was really getting into this. He likes to watch Fox, and, he's your average boomer, but he's a good guy, and he likes to think outside the box. That's why I respect him and love him so much. And he was like, Jake, I just want one thing for Christmas. This was Christmas of 2021, this past Christmas. He's like, I just want one thing, Jake. I've never read 1984. Will you please buy it for me? I was like, yeah, sure. Make sure you get the large print, because he's blind as fuck. But yeah, man, it's pretty awesome. And how did you decide to name your band that? Because obviously you've been aware of Conspiracies. I was listening to a podcast with you and Brandon from Expanding Reality. Shout out to you, man. You're a total badass. And yeah, dude, it's pretty cool. Like, how were you introduced to the George Orwellian world of Conspiracies?
So in high school, I was in the Communications Academy, which is video broadcasting, stuff like that. And our English teacher and all the subjects, with the exception of STEM, was in-house. So we had our own English teacher, and he, I guess it was less controversial back then to assign 1984 as reading. But I guess he felt safe enough to do something like that in-house. And at the time, me and a couple of my very close friends, one of whom was also in that English class, we had started a band from kind of we took a couple of guys from the previous band that we were in to start a new one. We wanted to do like some super hardcore, very technical stuff. And we were trying to, pick out a name. And I came up on with a couple of variations on it. It was like the George Orwell musical, but it was all based on George Orwell.
Nice.
And we finally landed on George Orwell the musical. And over the years, I'm very much influenced by bands that take the what's the name of those, like, theme albums, like thematic albums, and like we grafted a brand around it and made it like, because I've always been a huge sci-fi fan.
Oh, nice.
It used to just be movies, but I mean, once I got out of high school, I got really into reading.
Nice.
And like my number one favorite author, other than George Orwell, and if he had a larger output of work, he might be. But I think I know my favorite author is Philip K. Dick.
Oh, hell yeah, man. Yep.
Hands down. And a lot of people, even in the conspiracy world, they will reference Philip K. Dickian stuff, but they won't have actually read any Philip K. Dick, not even his short stories.
They just know of him. Yeah,
there's no excuse that you should not have read Minority Report. It's 18 pages.
I mean, if Tom Cruise is going to act in that movie, like, it was Tom Cruise, right? Let me just stop there. Okay, yeah. Yep. I mean, I've read Valis, and there's enough in that book alone to like riff on forever. But that was pretty cool, man. Yeah.
I liked Valis, but when I read it, I was a little too young to get it. I mean, I got it, but I didn't get it. Because also, even on a literary level, that book is somewhat impenetrable. Just because, Philip K. Dick is fucking insane. But he refined the ideas in Valis further and further until he got to Radio Free Abelmuth. And that, I think, is the best, because of those 3 or 4 books there at the end of his life, they're the same book over and over.
Okay.
But that last one, Radio Free Abelmuth, was like, it was the culmination of all of those books, in a very coherent story, in a good story too.
Yeah.
Because like Valis wasn't a good story. It was just these philosophical ideas and all of his experiences there after he had that stroke, or was communicating with another dimension, both of which are just as possible as the other. But that was a great story on top of just including all those messages. So
absolutely, man. Yeah. And I'd like to add too, because we started with Orwell, and like, I was just thinking, I'm glad you brought up school. Like, I'm an English teacher, so I'm happy that you dove into those books. Like, it's crazy to think about the things that we were exposed to, whether they're movies or books. Like, they're so formative. And when I was in early stages of my college career, I was in this awesome film class. So we would read 1984, and then we would watch the 1984 classic. Plus, we would watch the more modernized V for Vendetta, and we would compare them. And we did the same thing. So if you like talking about AI, we would read Frankenstein, and then we would, watch the OG Gene Wilder Frankenstein. And then we would go back and watch the modernized Deus Machina. It was really cool to think about. Besides Deus Machina, like Pinocchio as well, these sci-fi elements are in fairy tales, and it's pretty cool to see this creator and creation dynamic going on. And that's kind of what Big Brother is. Like, Big Brother creates the environment in which this government exists, and then we are the creation. We are the product of that.
Man, you just brought up like 4 or 5 things I definitely want to riff on. Now, Pinocchio first. We'll start with Pinocchio. The thing about Disney is that they take these dark folk tales that were already dark to begin with, and then just turn them into like pedophile stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
What the fuck is up with Pleasure Island, dude?
What is up with Pleasure Island? Why? Well, they don't come back boys. That's for sure.
Nope.
And it's crazy too, because I went back and I watched Pinocchio. Like, I grew up with Disney. I've always loved Disney, and my son loves Disney. It's something that I'm not all that afraid of, because there are actually some good-natured Disney movies out there, like The Good Dinosaur. That's a good fucking story.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like WALL-E. That's a good story.
It's the whole conundrum of separating the art from the artist. Like, I'm sure there are some animators who are working hard and they're really inspired, but they just work for this evil corporation. It's like, it's kind of a tragedy, but they do what we can.
And a lot of those early animators, they were sick fucks. And the whole idea behind Pinocchio, that he gets caught in these web of lies as he's trying to become a human, as he's trying to become a real boy. And it really, really, like, I mean, I guess it's a cautionary tale, but with child trafficking in it, which is just like, okay, if you're gonna lie and you're gonna wanna dig yourself into that hole, and you're gonna go, and then he goes into show business, right? And then the guy kidnaps him. Like, it's a crazy world when you're just running around everywhere you go and kidnap. But then he goes to Pleasure Island with all the other delinquent boys, and that's that famous scene where the guy's like, they go to Pleasure Island and they don't come back boys, and his face turns into a fucking devil, and they go there and they turn into jackasses after drinking, smoking, playing pool. I don't know if have you ever seen The Music Man? It always makes me think of
The Music Man.
The Music Man. You got trouble right here in River City. Trouble with a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. He's a shuckster, and he goes to these, and he's a music salesman, but he doesn't actually, he sells them the instruments, but he's also supposed to teach them how to play, but he can't actually play. So he jumps town so he drums up this fake kind of problem and offers the solution. He's like, your boys are out there playing billiards, and that's the problem, and you got to keep them off the streets, and you do that with music lessons, and I will teach these kids how to play if you just buy all this stuff.
Problem, reaction, solution.
He skips out. It's actually if you've never seen Music Man, the music is somewhat intolerable, but it's a good story. Is
this another Disney movie?
No, it's not. I want to say
but it's like an animated, like children's tale.
No. It's live action.
Oh, cool.
I want to say it's Rodgers and Hammerstein, but I actually don't think it is.
Yeah.
But it was of that era.
It is interesting though too. Like Pinocchio, he was swept into this show business culture, and as a cautionary, like, man, Hollywood will eat you alive. Like, they're gonna exploit you. They're gonna take away all of your money. And the funny thing is, just to circle back, like, Pinocchio was supposed to go to school, and he was a little rebellious, and that's how we got into this mess. And I'm not saying, like, I work for the public education system currently. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's like the best thing ever, but there's an interesting message there. It's like Pinocchio went out on the streets basically and was picked up by Hollywood or this showbiz culture, and without structure in his life. I mean, he has no mother. It's just him and Geppetto. And, it's like he was so vulnerable. And I think that it is a great cautionary tale, especially the fact that, Pinocchio has to go rescue his father, which gets into the whole, I've dove deep into the Jordan Peterson rabbit hole, and I love that. Like, he's doing this archetypal hero's journey after facing this idea that he can be swallowed up by this whale, and also he's going to be swallowed up by this big corporate Hollywood structure that just wants to tear him into pieces and turn him into a goddamn jackass.
Turn him into a jackass. Yep. Yeah. And that's the craziest scene too, is when all the boys are turning into jackasses and they're loading them on the ship, which is obviously child trafficking.
Right.
And then on top of that, they got boys who didn't turn all the way into jackasses, so they got to put them in the cage. They got to put them in the pen, and they got to figure out why they're not turning into jackasses. I assume they're putting that pen to be killed or whatever. But then after he escapes. Escapes Pleasure Island, he goes and he finds Geppetto is missing, and he learns that he went out to find him, and then he's got to reenact Jonah and the whale,
right?
And it's like it's very deep. It's a good fucking story. I don't understand why Disney has to shit all over the world. I don't fucking understand it. And we can get into it later. I don't really want to, but we can if you want to go down the what's going on in Florida with Disney World and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, all I can say now, and if we can get into it later, but what I will say now is that Disney is turning into its own like Vatican. And I think it's best that, anyone who's interested in Disney from that perspective of this power hungry corporation should look at them in that way, and also try to appreciate the art that they've made, despite how corrupt their businesses and their practices and the people who work for them. But yeah, I mean, that's all I would say right now.
Yeah, of course it's mostly politics. I mean, these people don't give a fuck about anything. Ron DeSantis could be a wolf in sheep's clothing, or he could be genuine.
Just like Elon Musk.
Exactly, like fucking Elon Musk. I wonder if these guys aren't just put out there as like, I don't know, the bait, basically. Anyway, I would like to get back on this literary thread that we're pulling on, because I think I have finally found someone who has read all the same shit I have.
Great feeling.
yeah, right. So what is also awesome about sci-fi And I really like that you went there with that too. The watching the movies, watching the classic movies, and then the more modern versions of the movies. So it was interesting. I never thought of comparing Ex Machina with Pinocchio. That's actually really cool. And Frankenstein and were you talking? Did you mean Young Frankenstein or Frankenstein with Gene Wilder?
Yeah, I did mean Young Frankenstein. So yeah, that was more of a comedy, I guess. But yeah, it's the same idea. I mean, we also read the novel, so like that was the basis. Like Mary Shelley, I actually have it right over here, and it's kind of funny that like in Deus Machina, like the engineer, the AI tech who wants to build this new creation has high aspirations. And there's a very interesting, like if you look into the imagery of this film, there's a very strong contrast between nature and this boxed in reality, like these square buildings, and the fact that Frankenstein goes through the same thing where it's like man versus nature, and nature always wins. Like there's nothing you can do about it. We cannot tame nature or overcome her. Like she's gonna kick our ass every time. And it's a really powerful lesson, but played out in two very different ways. It's really fascinating.
I've heard also that Frankenstein was supposed to be either a cautionary tale or a metaphor for the setting up of the League of Nations. I don't know. I haven't actually. Trying to think. I read Frankenstein so many years ago before I was actually aware. I think I read it in high school, so I can't actually. I'd probably have to go back and read it.
That's what's cool about going back to them. You're like, wow, I didn't notice this or this. Yeah.
Right. So let me tell you, have you ever, do you like Dostoyevsky? Obviously, I mean, if you've read, if you like Peterson, do you like Dostoyevsky?
Peterson introduced me to Notes from the Underground, and that's really like, for me personally, it's like a psychological deep dive. And, I've been talking to my students currently about nihilism because we're doing, Holocaust, like Night by Elie Wiesel, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And like this idea that, if you go deep underground, like there are people down there that, it's kind of like that film Us by Jordan Peele. Like there's a separate class of people that live underground that are eating rabbits, which is like a whole Alice in Wonderland rabbit hole thing. But they're second class citizens, and they're not living to their human potential. They're living like animals basically, and it's because they've been put down there. They've been placed down there, and the fact that Dostoyevsky kind of brings up the fact that this might happen to you because of a totalitarian regime that puts you down there, or you could put yourself down there. Like if you make the wrong choices, or you just don't know how to prevent yourself from being black pilled, then yeah, you could put yourself underground for sure. 6 feet under.
And Dostoyevsky was so on point about so much stuff. A big thread throughout Crime and Punishment and the Brothers Karamazov was this warning that science was going to upend religion, and that you were going to have large scale warfare. That would be it wouldn't have any moral underpinning, moral underlying. Not that when you historically look at religion, when it becomes an institution, when it becomes the Vatican, when it becomes the church, it gets just as authoritarian and murderous as any other institution does when it holds the pinnacle of power in society. But I thought that to be like a really, really so that's what this kid in Crime and Punishment is going through. He's going through this midlife crisis in his 20s.
Oh, yeah.
And he decides to murder somebody just to test out his own nihilism. And it's this incredible cautionary tale again, because it's what happens to somebody when they don't have that moral underpinning of religion. And that's why Alyosha was the moral protagonist of the Brothers Karamazov, because he held that moral underpinning, that religious moral underpinning, as his principal base throughout, living through this family that was totally just like, they were terrible people, his brothers. And then they have that famous scene. Have you read the Brothers Karamazov?
I've began it, and this is obviously like thanks to Jordan Peterson. I did not make it through. I was very distracted with grad school and becoming a teacher, but it was kind of funny because like as soon as I graduated, it was April 2020. It's like everything shut down. I couldn't get a job. So I had plenty of time to read over the summer and dive into conspiracies, but I never finished it.
That happened to a lot of people. I noticed there was a lot more.
It's a blessing.
And I was like, I started this particular podcast. I mean, I had a podcast many years ago from 2012 to 2015. And I shut that down. And then, I had a kid. Life happens. But then I decided there was someone that I'd actually met at work. I work at a veterans hospital. It was one of the veterans over there. Me and him got to talking a lot. And I was trying to really get away from conspiracies and just history and just fucking live. Like I needed to put my life back together. And he convinced me to start another podcast. So I started I think it was November 2019 was the first episode. So I was already like, once 2020 came around, I was like, here we go. Let's do this shit.
It was pretty wild too. Like I scrolled all the way down on your Spotify. I was like, okay, you started in 2019. I scrolled up a little bit and it was an episode in January of 2020 when you had an episode titled "Vaccines Are Safe and Effective." I was like, whoa, this guy was like a canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, so that was always my big thing was don't fucking trust pharmaceutical companies with your health. Obviously, it's but you don't even have to, you shouldn't have to convince people of that shit.
Especially if you know Operation Paperclip. I mean, Jesus, like Dr. Mengele, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's actually been one of the main, that has been an anchor in all of my research always has been the CIA, always. Yeah. Because it's out of that same elitist tradition, because it was spawned by Wall Street bankers, Sullivan and Cromwell, the Bushes, all that stuff, the Union Bank, the elite families, and they have those ties to the British East India Company and the Opium Wars and that's why the CIA has always been involved in cocaine and heroin and things like that. And so it was the pharmaceutical companies and the CIA. It's funny that you put those two together right there. That's like the central theme in all of my work.
It's hard to separate them these days,
No fucking shit.
Right.
So it was, but in the Brothers Karamazov, it's literally, it's one of my favorite books. It's incredible. It's so well written, and I think I have I can't remember who did the translation, but I don't read Russian. It's one of my life goals to eventually read Russian, to read those two books in their original language.
Respect.
But I have, from all the reviews, I tried to find the best translation. And it was supposed to be this balance between an accurate translation and a poetic translation without overdoing it.
Best you can find, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, man, it's fucking awesome. It's a great book.
Nice, man. Yeah, I should go back and definitely finish it. I've been absorbed into, so I traveled to Dallas, Texas recently. I planning to move there in July, and I believe we're in the same area, right? You're from Connecticut?
No, I'm from Massachusetts.
Okay. Yeah, so
I'm in northern
Englanders.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Newtown, Connecticut, and
really?
Yeah, man. I was a senior in high school, 2012 when Sandy Hook happened. So I was like a mile down the street, and man, it's a crazy world. And I think back to like certain things, like someone asked me one time, like, where were you in 9/11? Were you even born? I was like, yeah, I was in first grade. I didn't know what the fuck was happening. And it's just funny to see this trajectory from that point on, because they sent us home immediately. Got on the bus, they sent us home, and I get home and there's this burning building on TV. I'm like, what's that? And my parents are like, oh, go have a snack, don't. And then like years and years went by. I was like, wait a second, what did I think I may have missed something. Yeah. But right before I was born, there was the Oklahoma bombing, and that was, I guess that was April 95 or somewhere around there. And today's actually my 27th birthday, so I'm really excited.
That's right. Happy birthday.
Thanks,
I already forgot.
Yeah. It's just strange to think about, like, when my birthday comes around. I mean, I have the same birthday as Saddam Hussein too, which is really cool. It's different rabbit hole, because that's, again, something that was happening when I was young and too young to understand. And then going back, just like you said, going back to read these books or watch these movies and look for those symbols. Like, that's why Dante's Inferno has really stuck out to me a lot recently, because I went through this horrible time with the vaccine mandate and the mask mandate, and it kind of crushed my soul a bit. and getting out of that now when things are going back to quote unquote the new normal. I'm looking back on it like, man, like I feel like I went through the Inferno, not like anything dramatic. Like, you know, life is good. I have a very stable life, but you know, internally, mentally, man, like we all go through that Inferno, and what comes after is the purge, the purgatory or the purgatorio. You know, it's like the shamanic journey. You go through this hellfire and then you let it all go, and then you have to climb this mountain. It's like you reach rock bottom and it's like, shit, all right, you got to go up from here and climb up to paradise, man. And that's what I've been trying to do with the Loco Listens podcast, is talk to cool people like yourself, Jay, and figure out, how do we pull ourselves out of this mess? How do we find truth where there's so many lies? One lie leads to another truth. That's how I've been looking at it.
That's a pretty positive way of looking at it, because lies just lead to more lies in my world. Right over here. No,
Once
but
you realize that something is a lie, you're like, oh, you know what? Let me find out the truth. And then you're like, you know what? What else are they lying to us about? It's like that chain reaction.
Yeah, and you know, it's always been weird to try to convince people that something is a lie. Like, I grew up with a mother, and I'm not bashing her or anything like that, but she was a pathological liar. You know, and it was, you know, if you're watching, Mom, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. So it was, to think that adults would lie, I'd be like, yeah, of course they lie. Or to think that an authority figure would lie, I'd be like, oh, of course they fucking lie. Or, you know, anything like that, on and on. It was when someone first brought, you know, the idea of a conspiracy theory to me in the form of 9/11, that was, because I was 12. I was 12, 13, something like that, 8th grade. And you know, when it came around, loose change must have come around when I was like 15, 16, something like that. Someone showed me loose change and they're like, yeah, man, it was all conspiracy. It was the government. I was like, bet. Yeah, that makes more sense than a man in a cave around on the other side of the world. Okay, yeah, that makes way more sense. It's a shame because I've never actually gotten around to reading Dante's Inferno. He's right there. He's right on my bookshelf.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh, it's there. It's on my list. I've been going through the books, the great books of the Western world. So I've read, you know, all the important stuff, and of course, like with some exceptions, because you can't read it all. That's actually a sad day when you figure that out and you're like, there's no fucking way I'm ever gonna read it all.
But it's great to value time. So like, when you say that, Jay, I'm like, man, we can have so many conversations, because like there are billions of books out there and there's trillions of conversations you can have about them. And it's pretty cool. Like it seems like a means to prevent yourself from getting blackpilled. Like I said earlier, it's like, because you can find wisdom in these books that do tie into conspiracy or your own inner spirituality, like with Dante. And it's a great practice. So yeah, I'm glad that you value your free time to realize that these books that you can read, I mean, you end up reading them as you go on, and it's, you know, we do what we can, right?
For sure. But there is one book that I have read that is based off of Dante's Inferno, and that is Dan Brown's Inferno.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and there's of course the movie Inferno, and it's one of these. So, what is really, really interesting about Inferno is that I think he wrote it in 2018.
Okay. Maybe
2017, something like that. But it's about this billionaire who believes in Malthusian philosophy. He's a total climate change guy. Actually, he's a transhumanist. And he believes that the world is overpopulated and the only solution is to kill off most people. So he creates a virus.
Ooh.
And this virus is hidden somewhere in the world, of which, for whatever reason, I never got this. This is a sidebar. I never got why, especially in Dan Brown books, the villain leaves a breadcrumb trail. There's always a clue.
It's a game
it's like a National Treasure where he's like, and that clue leads to another clue. You know, thank you, John Voight. Sit down before you have a goddamn heart attack. But it's like, so there's this billionaire, he creates a virus and he kills himself so that nobody can find it other than fucking Robert Langdon. But what it is that the WHO catches wind of it. And so it's all the WHO that's trying to track this thing down because they know it's somewhere. And he had the help of I think it was called the Consortium. It was this private company that they help out billionaires for lots of money do whatever they want. Usually it's to disappear for a certain amount of time to figure something out. Not lobbies, but they help them to disappear.
Like Six Underground with that Ryan Reynolds movie. He can kind of like fake his own death and then he's
something like that. Yeah. And so the WHO enlists Robert Langdon to help them find this virus. But he actually, it gets complicated because he takes a hit to the head or something like that, and he has temporary amnesia. But this guy who is a transhumanist billionaire that is trying to depopulate.
His name isn't Bill, is it?
No, however, they mention Bill Gates in the book several times. So it's a virus, WHO,
revelation
Bill
of the
Gates, method. And I'm just sitting there like, Dan Brown, you too? Come on, bro. Like, I thought we were cool. Brown? I thought we were cool. Yeah. I'm over here reading and The Lost Symbol was his best fucking book. I don't know. Did you read The Lost Symbol? Are you a Dan Brown guy?
I have a funny story about Dan Brown. No, I haven't read any of his books, but I used to work
because dude, the Da Vinci Code is Holy Blood, Holy Grail. Yeah. It's that fucking.
The films are crazy too. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, like, I used to work at this gym called Club 24, and there was a cardio cinema. So they had like all the treadmills and the ellipticals lined up in front of this big projector screen. And one day they were playing the Da Vinci Code in there. And the scene where the dude's whipping himself? It's like, if you want to get a good workout in, you got to watch that shit, man. You're gonna, that's my only experience. I mean, the films are crazy. The symbolism is really cool. Like Robert Langdon, exploring these symbols. And that's always fascinated me for sure.
Yeah. What's dope about The Lost Symbol is that it's this, and of course, I don't want to really like lay out the whole book because it's fucking incredible, and if you haven't read it, you should. What's dope about these books too, Dan Brown's, they're pretty much self-contained, kind of like a James Bond book, so you don't have to read them all. But The Lost Symbol is this dude, he fakes his own death. Oh, I'm sorry, I might have just ruined it. He fakes his own death, and it looks like it's golden hour over there. That's some pretty nice lighting.
If anyone ever sees this video, I got some crazy. It looks like there's a fucking UFO like beaming me up here.
Yeah,
crazy. Maybe they are. Yeah. Can't even see.
So it revolves around Freemasonry, Freemasonic symbols. A lot of it takes place in Washington, D.C. He's not shy about the Freemasonry, the architecture of the Capitol building, all these symbols. And the Lost Symbol actually ends up being, I don't know if you mind the spoilers.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm still going to read it anyway.
I say the same thing. People are like, I don't want to spoil it. I'm like, you already told the whole fucking story. I want to fucking hear what I don't care.
There's only 7 plot lines, and they've been repeated over and over again.
Exactly. So, and I could say, and people hate watching movies with me because I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the guy. That's him.
See, I'm the total opposite. I would love to watch movies with someone like that, man. Yeah.
They're like, how did you fucking know? And I'm like, well, it was foreshadowing with the music right there, the way they kind of zoomed in on his eyes, but not too much so that you would get too suspicious.
There's some formulas, man. Yeah.
But enough so that you would subconsciously pick up on this guy's a suspect.
Planting seeds.
Yeah, that's why it's like when you're watching a fucking SVU. This might have been a joke, but my mother is an SUV like fanatic.
Yeah, man.
And if someone gets caught like 15 minutes in, you're like, no way, that's not him. Not going to happen. So the Lost Symbol. That's a great comparison. Yeah. The Lost Symbol ends up being the Holy Bible that is hidden in the cornerstone of the Washington Monument. And it's like they're looking, there's like this guy, he's devoted his whole life to trying to find the lost symbol, and he thinks he's found it, and he thinks if he tattoos it on himself that he'll become immortal when it's just the Bible. You know what I mean?
It's the Bible.
Well, he thought it was a symbol, not the symbol of everything. You know what I mean? Like it's Dan Brown is really cool like that. Yeah, he's really fucking. He knows his shit.
Well, there's something you brought up earlier. So you have a very excellent vocabulary, my friend, and that's what I noticed right away. And so you said Malthusian. So like I know like Mal is bad. Like Malthusian kind of reminds me of, and I'm saying it because I don't know the definition, but just bear with me for a second. Thinking about David Icke, he would talk about Agent Smith from The Matrix and how humanity is a virus and they need to be basically like wiped out or herded or eradicated. One of those three. And basically, it's kind of what the climate change sort of culture is doing. And yeah, man, it's just really fascinating that some of these symbols can kind of reveal the fact that human beings are way more divine than we're led to believe. Like, I can tell you a story about when I first encountered sleep paralysis and like lucid dreaming. Like, I kind of heard you and Brandon Thomas talking about that a bit. And it's like, it's crazy, man. Like, some of the biggest conspiracies out there are just trying to trick people into thinking that they're not as special as they can realize that they are. And this materialistic worldview is, I mean, psychologically speaking, that can really lead people to that nihilism that we talked about earlier. And it's cool to become aware, whether it's through these symbols in movies or these stories that we tell each other or that we are exposed to. It's really cool that you could rediscover this, like think about Tartaria. There's like a whole civilization buried underneath the soil. It's like, that's how humanity is. Like, we might look like this, like slaves on a prison planet, but deep down, like our origins are way more interesting than we were led to believe. So it's cool to look into these symbols for that exact reason, for sure.
Yeah, and it's crazy because the prison is I mean, it's not of our own making, but the maintenance of it is.
Yes.
But to go back to Malthusian,
yes.
that's not a it's a name. It's Thomas Malthus. It's his idea. So Thomas Malthus was a late 19th century mathematician, and he figured out that that overpopulation was a huge danger to civilization because while the population grows geometrically, the food supply only grows arithmetically. Now, he was writing this before the agricultural revolution. Oh, no, maybe he was 18th century, if that was preceding the agricultural revolution, whatever it was.
Sounds like the Georgia Guidestones a little bit.
Well, it does because, so all of these elitists with all of these depopulation ideas and transhumanism and all that stuff, it stems directly from Malthus. But his ideas are just a scientific justification. Now, I say scientific with the loosest definition.
Yeah.
The loosest definition, because no one has got, anybody that goes back and looks at the numbers know that this guy was full of shit.
All science can be challenged and tested. Yeah, that's what we got to remember, right? Yep.
But he was continuing a tradition of English elitists. You know what I mean? Of course, he was going to think that the useless eaters needed to go. Yep. You know, it's like Galton, like Francis Galton. But so a lot of these people, these especially transhumanists, they will speak of things in very Malthusian terms, and so it's become sort of this thing in and of itself where. It's people that are using like a totally false science, but they might not. It's almost like people that are, and I'm not like bashing pro-choice or pro-life people, but it's pro-choice people that love Planned Parenthood but know nothing about Margaret Sanger. You know what I mean? Like, know nothing. And when I even bring this up to people, smart people too, I'll be like, oh, you know about Margaret Sanger then? Like, well, no, who's that? She fucking started Planned Parenthood, fucking eugenicists, created it to kill black people, like, and to sterilize Indians. Like, anyway, so Malthus and Galton, and you could throw Darwin in there. They were like the behemoths of the 19th century that were to help facilitate and create a scientific justification for what the British elite already wanted to do anyway. And even within this group of people, they were to help. Malthus was actually directly responsible for the science behind what the British Parliament was doing with the poor laws of the 1800s. So the poor laws were, public assistance, but they were meant to get people on the dole, and
it's like the origin of welfare.
Yeah, and to keep them sick and to keep them down there.
That's
so
a prison system in and of itself. Yeah,
exactly. And it's also around the same time as the Panopticon. Was that Jeremy Bentham?
Okay. Interesting you bring up Jeremy Bentham. So let me grab this book really quick because I don't know if are you familiar with the TV show Lost?
I've never watched it, but it's one of
okay.
those ones that people have whipped me for not watching it.
So
Like,
I
"You would
don't know
love
who
it."
Jeremy Bentham is, but there's a character who basically dies and is resurrected, and he's resurrected, or yeah, he like becomes Jeremy Bentham. And I won't dive into it too much because you haven't seen it, but now I'm really curious to learn who this guy is. So sorry.
Yeah, Jeremy Bentham he wanted to make a more efficient prison system. He wanted to create a prison system. And this is not like, it was his ideas were used philosophically afterwards, but this was a very
Like
practical, this was a very practical undertaking. He wanted to help create a prison system where you could, it was more efficient, where you could have less guards and more prisoners. And so he had this setup where on the inside was the guards, and in a concentric circle around the center was where all the prisoners were being kept, so that they could keep an eye on every prisoner at all times, but you couldn't see the guards, so that you could be watched at any time.
Yeah.
So the prison system became internalized, and you didn't have to actually you didn't have to watch them. You didn't have to go in and beat them.
Yeah,
into
it becomes
compliance.
like self-contained. Yeah.
Exactly. And so these principles, you package all these together. This is like the 18th century philosophical justification for everything that they've been trying to do through the UN and all this stuff, trying to create their one world order, as they've been trying to do since, I don't know, time immemorial.
Right.
And so this is like these are the progenitors of the system that we live under now. Of course, that's super simplified, but yes.
Yeah, man. Okay. Well, there's an interesting thing because people always compare school to prison. And, as a parent, I love talking to parents. And I've spoke with Emmanuel Kingman on the Goodness Over Darkness podcast, Godcast. That was my first ever appearance. So thank you, Emmanuel. You're a hell of we were talking about Dante's Inferno. It was a hell of a conversation, I could say. And, it's pretty funny that there is a movement now to break down that self-contained factor in school, where like you send your kids off. It's like a daycare, and you don't have to worry about them. You don't have to see what's going on. You can just trust the system and it'll spit them back out just the way you want them. And I always love talking to parents, and this is something that Emmanuel and I spoke about a lot, was the fact that, you can pay me X amount of dollars as a teacher and I'll do my absolute best, but I can't replace a parent, and I'm only 27. I don't have kids. Like it's something that I could never fulfill, but I could show them a couple things. I could guide them to think critically, think for themselves. And the point I'm trying to make is that school should not be thought of like a prison. It can be, but the way out of that is if we remember that the greatest teachers ever are not teachers, they're mothers and fathers. And when you have these Malthusian sort of dynamics happening in the family, like let's say you have like a kid who's like hardcore climate change activist, and their parents are like, no, we don't give a shit about that. Well, that's going to cause a huge split in the family, and there's going to be like an ideological war going on at home, because the flow of information and the belief system are going to be really out of whack. So what I would say is, if parents are concerned about the indoctrination from the same global elites that we were talking about in schools, the best thing you can do is just talk to your kid about what they're learning and help put it into context. But if you don't, well, who knows what kinds of conclusions they're going to come to. And when David Icke talks about these Malthusians, he's basically saying that just like Mr. Smith or Agent Smith in the Matrix, the whole idea is to think about humanity as a cancer on this planet. And that's far from the truth, for sure,
Yeah, well, they have to maintain that illusion, because if people were to actualize and become real, to become what they could become and what everybody deserves to become, then all these guys would have their fucking heads chopped off in an instant. We realize that we don't need this parasitical overlord class telling us what to do, trying to corral us into smaller and smaller pens, which...
That's why going into the homesteading route is so cool. Like, I think Brandon Thomas is someone that's like, he's got the animals, he's got like, it's a cool idea to aspire to, because like right now, like, you know, I'm very dependent on the system. But like one day, you know, if I could have like my chickens and my cows, like, you know, or on the whole idea of like, well, you could be dependent your whole life, especially if you're on like a welfare program. But how much are you going to get out of that? Like, what if you could find a way to build your own boat, as Terrence McKenna would say, or like have a plan or become a part of someone else's plan? And I'm always down to try and figure out how to do that. But for now, I'm going to keep on working hard and saving up. But, you know, it's good to think forward a bit and be like, all right, well, you know, if you had a plot of land and the freedom to do with it as you please, well, I mean, that's what life is all about, right?
Absolutely, man. And you know, it's funny. I was just talking to Brandon on the phone the other day.
Nice.
And I was telling him about I take my son to this petting zoo a lot, and I was like, somehow we got on talking about goats, and I was like, yo, have you ever stared into the eyes of a goat? It's fucking insane. He's like, yeah, I have several goats. I was like, of course you have fucking several goats. Like, what the fuck am I even talking about? But yeah, Brandon's one of my favorite people in the world.
Love that guy.
We talk as often as we can. I'm busy as shit. He's busy as shit. You know, so it's crazy. I probably talk to him more than I talk to my mother. I don't know why I'm bringing up my mother a bunch of times today. I don't know.
Well, maybe,
maybe because Mother's Day is coming up,
Steve's, and you know, it's like your family. You know, if they think you're crazy, then you have to kind of like seek out another family, or you create your own family.
Although
I've always thought about it.
I am a conspiracy theorist because of my parents. My father was a big believer in aliens. He was always like, he was the first, when he told me when I was like 12, he was like, yo, there's this book called Behold the Pale Horse by this guy named Bill Cooper, and he's fucking gangster. And, you know, he worked for naval intelligence and blah, blah, blah. He just went through it. I was like, all right, I'm down. I'm cool with this. He was a big Nostradamus guy. He loved, you know, documentaries on Nostradamus. And my mom was always like, oh, fucking JFK, they fucking killed him. It was like, there was no way that was Oswald. Oh, Diana, they fucking killed her because she was pregnant with that Egyptian's baby. You know, and so with them, I was like, all right, well, I guess 9/11 isn't that far of a stretch. You know, and if I start throwing some shit out to my mom, she's like, yeah, that fucking sounds right. You know?
Awesome. Yeah, man. So it's good to be able to talk about it for sure.
Yeah, I've always had a good relationship with my family. You know, like, well, not always, but in these terms. Yeah. You know, no one has ever ostracized me because of something that I believe. You know, they're always like, believe whatever the fuck you want to believe. I don't care. Like, pass me the fucking potatoes. Just shut up. You know, and I forget how I got here. How did I get here?
Well, I feel like I should share because I have been ostracized, and I do love my family very much. But you know, there was a lot of pressure for me to get this jab, this cowpoke, and you know, I am so blessed. I was able to get religious exemptions. Like, thank you, Jesus. Seriously, but like, you know, there was a time where, and this, you know, this still may be the case. It's been a while, but you know, I would have been singled out many, many times for being the only unvaccinated family member. It's like, all right, you can all have fun, but you, Jake, you must wear a mask while you're next to me. And I was treated like that Malthusian, like I'm the virus now. Like, and the funny thing is, dude, I would get tested every single week. Yeah, I was within 3 feet of people who have COVID multiple times, and I never got it. And I don't know what that says about me, and I don't know what that says about the pandemic or COVID or whatever, but it was like at a certain point, I was like, okay, you know, they're just, this is too much for me. And I'm so thankful that this is slowing down. But, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, this is just the lull before the next variant. I don't know if you want to go into that, but.
Oh yeah, for sure. After the midterms, you know, it's on. You know, what I mean, it's right back on. The signs are already pointing that way. Yeah. They need their. They need them. I'm so tired of it. But so I went through the same thing. So I work at a hospital. I work for the federal government. They were like, you gotta get it. I was like, I'm not getting it. And you can try to fire me. We can go to the union. We can go that route. But I don't think you want to get... So they were really hoping on people just complying and thinking that their jobs were in danger. When all you had to do was check a fucking box. Like it was paperwork, and I checked a box. And I'm like, you want to rumble later? Like, we can do that. So everything is, even to this point, it's still in limbo. And I'm lucky enough to not actually work directly with patients, because all those people, while they're not being fired, they are being detailed elsewhere, which is going to have its own cascade of consequences.
How'd you get into that? Like, were you a veteran yourself, or are
No,
you?
no, I was in ROTC in high school, and during the invasion of Iraq, and I did not feel right about it. Even at 16, I was like, this yellow cake uranium bullshit seems like, well, bullshit. And so I just went on to, my mother worked for the VA, so she got me a job over there.
Nice.
And, I was pro-military, but anti-war.
Right.
It's kind of a weird place to be, but
It's like a warrior ethos, but like the political garbage that goes along with it is not, it's not exciting. Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, I love veterans, and most of the people I know are veterans, and they're some of the most hardcore, like down to earth motherfuckers.
Hell
and
yeah.
they're like all Republican, which it's not that I'm a Republican, but I get along with them because they don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? They don't like try to tell me what to say or think. But they're actually more primed. Well, I mean, it's like, during the Bush administration, Democrats told more truth, and then during Obama, Republicans told more truth.
Pendulum,
It is. It really is, although Trump was just an anomaly. So, so these
we
days...
need a good trickster every now and then to shake things up.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. I mean, he wasn't a fucking Republican anyway. Kind of whatever. But, so now that Sleepy Joe is in office, now... Republicans tell more truth. It is what it is. Yeah. It's the crazy part. So I know that if shit went down tomorrow, like if some country invaded America, I got my boys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
it's all about community.
Everybody that I know can shoot and survive. You know what I mean? And it's good to know.
Yeah, man. The crazy thing about that, like I told you, I grew up near Sandy Hook, and I remember, so I thank God my dad like raised me to be a hunter. Like we would go pheasant hunting a lot, and every Thanksgiving we would go out and try to get a couple birds. And one day, this was probably 2013, so the year after Sandy Hook, I was wearing my Newtown wrestling shirt, and I was in a journalism class. It was like a big lecture with like 200 people, and I'm wearing my shirt, and the guy's lecturing, and he looks at me. And he's like, "Hey, you're the kid with that Newtown shirt. What do you think about gun control?" I'm like, "Oh man, please don't do this to me." I explained to him like, "Yep, I have my hunting license. I grew up with all this. I'm not a gun owner, but I'm a responsible user. I enjoy the sport and just the whole respect thing of having all that firepower and just using it for hunting." And so I tried to divert the subject, and I was like, "Man, like it's not about that. It's about mental health." And that was not the answer he was looking for. And it was just very funny to have someone like, I literally got to see someone triggered in real time just because of one word, Newtown. I was like, damn, like, well, yeah, but not to dwell on that too much. Like it's cool to feel self-sufficient, like you said, whether it's food or protection, security, but the best self-sufficiency we can have is knowledge,
Yeah, I put more I put more weight and importance in networks.
Yeah.
Like knowledge is cool, but if you don't know anybody, it ain't worth shit.
Yeah, you got to have the people around you to help you apply all the things that you've been learning. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's always where my strength has been just like being able to roll in and out of networks seamlessly. I usually make friends wherever I go anyway, nice. But I can plug into certain networks and connect them.
Yeah.
I can usually be a good go-between. Nice. Like one kind of example, it's, I guess, the story. I had two friends that were about to go at it, during a bonfire, and they were ready to throw down. And I just like got in between them. I talked them down, and one of them, who is like, he's a giant. He's like 6'7", and he was like, man, I'm really glad that you stepped in. I didn't want to fight him, but if there was anybody that could have stopped that fight, that was you. I'm really glad you stepped in. And I was like, all right, man, just fucking cool it, man.
Dude, that's a valuable skill to have. If you have to talk someone off any kind of ledge, I mean, that's been useful since the dawn of man. Like you gotta be able to find a peaceful resolution whenever possible, but be prepared to fight. Of course, it's like when Buddha would decide, we're going to train these monks in martial arts because yes, they can become peaceful and grounded and centered, but what happens when they're attacked? Like, what are they going to do? Just sit there? Like, you gotta be prepared, but also, don't be a dick.
Now, I'm sure you've seen the Jordan Peterson Bible series.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that always stuck out was he said there was this mistranslation.
The meek shall inherit the earth.
The meek shall inherit the earth, right? And that the real translation was something more like someone who has a sword but knows when to keep it sheathed.
Yes.
And that's what I always think. That's what made me think of what you just said.
Yeah, man. He was talking about Carl Jung, and like when you brought up the CIA, I was like, oh man, there's a conversation we can have about like Jung and Alan Dulles, and it reminded me of this.
Really, Jung and Alan Dulles. Please tell me this somehow escaped my attention. How the fuck did this happen?
So Alan Dulles, he was the former director of the CIA.
He was the second director. Mm-hmm.
So he worked very closely with Carl Jung, and I believe what was going on was that learning from this, you could call him like a savant, or he was like I don't want to say shaman, but he was someone who was a bridge between the material and the physical world in his own personal way, but also like helping his patients as a psychologist access those, like the Akashic record, you could say. So Carl Jung, and this goes along with Freud too, because Freud and Edward Bernays. It's almost like, so we have these brilliant minds, and it's like Pinocchio. You find talent, and then they're gonna try to exploit something out of them to be weaponized. And I don't know specifically what they took from Carl Jung, but if you Google Alan Dulles and Carl Jung, you'll find something. I haven't done my homework. I didn't expect to talk about this, but I can confirm that for sure, that Alan Dulles and Carl Jung worked together, or maybe not knowingly, that Jung offered this insight into the collective unconscious, but it's very similar to Freud and Edward Bernays, and the fact that the propaganda that we see was created from the Freudian logic of, exploiting desire and finding ways to make people tick by showing them what they should want, and like manufacturing that desire. And it's really interesting to think about Carl Jung in this way, because, I was listening to you and Brandon Thomas. That's how I kind of prepared for this. I didn't prepare anything else, just to like listen to you and like see how we could vibe. And the cool thing is that I think you guys were talking about dreams, right? So I had this one experience. You ever like try lucid dreaming or astral projection?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
I had to stop, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I don't really pursue it much these days. I may smoke a little too much pot to be able to anyway, but good news is that when I was young, I was curious, and I was having repetitive nightmares. And thank goodness, as like a 12, 13-year-old kid, I was able to go online and like try to dig through this and figure out, all right, who else is having these nightmares? What do I do about them? And I was led into lucid dreaming, because they're like, all right, if you can realize that you're dreaming while you're dreaming and take control, then you can create whatever dream you want. I was like, that's rad. I want to learn how to do that. So I really invested into it and practiced reality checks and how to dream journal and did the whole thing. And eventually I found the best technique was what's called wake back to bed, WBTB. So that would be, we have this 90-minute REM cycle. And if you wake up in the middle of your REM cycle and go back to sleep shortly after, you'll fall directly back into REM sleep. Whereas if you just go to bed now, it takes you a bit to get there. So what would happen, and this was totally by accident, I would have a snow day, because, growing up in New England, we get a fuck ton of snow. And I would wake up, realize, all right, there's no school today, and I'll go back to bed. And I would dive right into a dream. Now, at this point, I was already schooled on sleep paralysis and these techniques to stay conscious while you're dreaming. And I had this experience where I was laying there, I was basically meditating, and I didn't know it at that point. And I'm trying to keep my mind awake while my body was falling asleep. So there's a detachment happening where my mind is staying conscious, but I'm letting my body fall asleep. It's like some kind of trick. And I started to feel like I was being electrocuted. Like it was almost like if you could imagine the neurons in your brain firing and like there's these electrical pulses going on. I was feeling that, and I heard the sound. Like I also listened to you in Conspiracy Kyle. So I'm going to bring up Star Wars for a second. I actually got my R2D2 shirt on, but the thing is, it sounded just like Palpatine shooting out lightning bolts. And I was like, Jesus. Yoda. Oh, hell yeah. Grogu, my man.
Sorry, continue.
No, it's all right. Yeah. I felt like I was being electrocuted. I heard the electricity, like Palpatine shooting out those lightning bolts. And the thing that I come away with is this, like, was that just me dreaming, or was I aware of this experience that was happening that normally would happen while I'm unconscious? I just happened to be conscious at that point. It was almost like I hacked my reality for the first time ever. And that's sort of what Jung seemed to be leading people into, is the fact that there's this collective unconscious surrounding us at all times. Like the archetypes, like, the proverbial devil and the angel on your shoulder, like they've been with us this whole time. And the fact that if you can meditate or almost go into like a trance state, I mean, you've experienced this, like with astral projection, things like that. It's like you can access these things, and oh, hell yeah, it could be dangerous for sure. Like you don't know what you're going to invite in. And I'm not sure what I was inviting in at that point, but it literally shocked me awake. And at that point, I realized like I could never go back to my old paradigm. I was like, all right, this is not just a material reality where you just wake up and you go to school, you come home and you eat and you go to bed. Like there is a whole other dimension happening that I wasn't aware of until I was literally like shocked awake. And that's what I always think about when people ask me like, well, when did you first start to look inward? And it was like, that was that crazy moment.
Yeah, I had to stop visiting the astral realm because the entities that I would encounter there made it very clear that I was not supposed to be there. And to wrap this all up, I'm going to have to let you go, Jake. There is one thing that I found very interesting from Jung, and that was at the end of his life, he said that everyone is living in a dream, and he did not mean it metaphorically. He meant it very literally. And so that's always something I like to stew on. But Jake, dude, this was an excellent conversation. I am very glad that you reached out. This was friggin' awesome. And I'm happy to welcome you into the community. And Thanks, it's great to have you here. And can you let everybody know where they can find all your stuff?
Awesome. Thank you, Jed. Well, you're welcome on my podcast anytime. I'd love to continue this rabbit hole that we found ourselves in. It's the Loco Listens podcast. And because today is my birthday, I had a special plan. So I've created a Telegram group, and what I'm asking all of my friends, if you want to go into this Telegram group, it's Loco Listeners. And what I'm doing is I'm asking for a small birthday present. It's not money. Don't worry. I'm just asking people to record a short message. If you could say, welcome to Loco Listens. I want to make my own intro with all my friends, because that's what I'm here to do, is listen to people's stories and learn. And you've certainly taught me a lot. I'm excited to go back and read some of those books. So yeah, man, Loco Listens podcast at Loco Listens on Instagram. Looking forward to doing this again. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. This is probably the most unique, special birthday I've ever had. And it was a pleasure to spend it with you, my friend.
Hey, man, I'm really honored. That's really sweet. Hey, Jake, You have a great rest of your day. Thank you, man.
Thanks, man. You too. Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday.